This is Veatah Tetzaveh. The Maamar, as you can see, is very long. It's 430 lines. And we're not finishing 430 lines in one class. But at the same time, we're intent on doing only one class on Veatah Tetzaveh, which means that the class is going to be more a summary and an overview, so to speak, than an actual learn. And in effect, we're learning this class as our Fabrengen for Gimel Tammuz. There are many things that are being done on the yeshiva.net in conjunction with Gimel Tammuz. Our contribution is that we're going to be learning this Maamar in Mitzvah Hashem as it relates to Gimel Tammuz. A little background on the Maamar. The Maamar was given at Purim Cotton, which was a Tuesday night, which means 2 weeks minus a day before Chav Zayin Noder, 1992, Tafshin Nun Beis. If I recall correctly, the Rebbe had gone to the Ohel, came back, relatively speaking, early, and gave the Complacency out for a very long time, 4 or 5 hours, a very, very long time. And there were a few unusual things about this Complacency. One of them is the Rebbe put $2, we get a little plastic with the Complacency and $2, and a piece of lekach. During the winter of Nun Beis of 1991-92, we got lekach from the Rebbe 4 times, which is very unusual. The Rebbe had never done this before. Besides for Erev Yom Kippur, there was lekach on 3 other occasions. I believe Chav Beis Shvat, Purim Cotton, and one other time, I don't remember when it was. Additionally, when the Rebbe gave this Kuntres, there were some unusual things. The Rebbe was walking out of shul already. It must have been 10:30, 11:15. And he stopped several times because people came and the Rebbe gave out more. The Rebbe had never done this before. Usually once the Rebbe stopped giving a kuntres, you missed your turn, you came in late, it was too late, you had to go and get the kuntres from the secretaries. On this occasion, the Rebbe stopped, I remember being in shul twice, I believe, downstairs to give kuntresim, and what I understand was that when he went upstairs and he stood in the hall, he gave out more. It was quite obvious that Rebbe was very, very interested, or desperate almost, to distribute this kuntres as much as possible. Another very compelling little detail is that, of course, the Maamar was prepared for print. The Maamar was prepared and edited by the Rebbe. And when the Rebbe sent out the gelis, the typed version that he had edited so that it'd be prepared for publication, the Rebbe wrote on the margin, Yehi Ratzon Sheyifel Pu'ulasa Haritzuya, which means, I hope that this Maamar will have the effect it's meant to have. The Rebbe had never written a comment like that. And of course, in hindsight, it's very obvious because this Maamar is not just a Maamar, it is the Maamar. This is the Maamar that when it comes Gimel Tammuz, we learn year after year after year, and the Maamar shouts at you that this speaks to all of us and to each of us in a most obvious way as something which is timeless. It speaks to us right now in our living relationship with our living Rebbe. Let me go back a little bit. The previous Rebbe, in the last 5 years of his physical life, stopped saying and writing Chassidus. He continued to write siches and letters, but he stopped saying and writing Chassidus. So what happened was that the Rebbe would take old Maimorim that had not been so widely available in America from the Russia years or from the Lithuanian years, from the years in Latvia, and redistribute them. But the Maimorim came out as if they had been current. Maimorim of Tishrei Tavshin Vav, and Yud Beis Tammuz Tavshin Vav, and Tavshin Zayin, and so forth. Even though they were the same Maimorim, word for word, that the Rebbe had written years earlier, they came out as original Maimorim, as fresh Maimorim. Yud Shvat, the previous Rebbe had Yortzeit for his grandmother. Yud Gimel Shvat had Yortzeit for his mother. So Tafshin Tes, there was a Maamar Yud Shvat, and then again Tafshin Yud was Maamar Yud Shvat. And the Maamar that the previous Rebbe gave out for these 2 Yortzeits was Basi Legani. And of course, everybody knows one of those very, very incredible details that the Maamar Basi Legani, which the previous Rebbe gave out for Yud Shvat and Yud Gimel Shvat, and of course the second half would eventually come out for Purim and Beis Nissen, was the Maamar that the Rebbe, our Rebbe, the Rebbe Zogazunzain, heard from the Friedrich Rebbe the first Shabbos he was in Ostov. The first time the Rebbe visited the Friedrich Rebbe was in 1922-23, Pei Gimel. Probably he was already 23. And from what I understand from the Igros Kodesh, he came there to meet the Rebbetzin, a Shidduch. And on that occasion, the first Shabbos, the Rebbe was Bamfried, the Rebbe, Pashas Boy, Tafresh, Pei Gimel, the Rebbe said the Maamar Basi Lagani. It is very compelling, very, very compelling. And 27 years later, this was the Maamar that the Rebbe chose. When I say the Rebbe chose, I'm not sure which, the Rebbe or the previous Rebbe, to come out for Yud Shvat. And then, of course, the previous Rebbe was nostalgic, he passed away. And the Rebbe immediately said, our Rebbe immediately said that this is the Maamar of Tetzaveh, the Maamar of Ilula. Even though the Maamar came out for some other purpose, the Maamar officially came out in conjunction with the yahrzeit of his grandmother and his mother. But of course, a Rebbe is a balabas, a Rebbe knows everything, a Rebbe is a master of his destiny. And if this Maamar was given out in conjunction with Yud Shvat, which turned out to be Allah HaShamayim, this becomes the Tzavah, the will of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And of course, over the years of our Rebbe's Nesiyas, of the Rebbe's Nesiyas, the Rebbe has showed us in hundreds and hundreds of different ways and hundreds of different circumstances how the Maamar of Yud Shvat, how Basi Lagani is the Frierdiker Rebbe's Tzavah. All the basic ideas in the Maamar, Dire B'Tachtenim, Shtus de Kedusha, Iskafi V'Ishapcha, Bing Mahapach Sheker to Keresh, Tzivis Hashem, Bizbuz Ha'oitzris, all of the ideas that are so important in the previous time in Basi Lagani have become mainstays of the Rebbe's Nesiyas. You see how the Rebbe's Nesiyas reflects the Maamar Basi Lagani. But I suspect that if the Rebbe had not showed us all of these hints, we would never have gotten them. The Maamar Veatah Tetzaveh doesn't need any hints. It's so clearly the message of the Rebbe to us that nobody has to point it out to you. It's so plain, it's so obvious that this is a Maamar that is written specifically for the circumstance we're in right now. There was a Helam V'Hester, there was a Gimel Tammuz, there was a Chav Zayin Nodar. On the other hand, there was a promise and a prophecy that Hinei Zeh Melech HaMashiach Ba, we're living at the eve of Mashiach. And we all believe this, and we all live with this. And the energy for this, relatively speaking, short tkufa, is this Maamar Veatah Tetzaveh. I've been telling people, whoever listens to me, I've been telling this. Chaim Fogelman has a song that he made for the children. I don't remember the song, and I certainly cannot sing it, but the words that resonate, that resound are, how did he know the answers to all the questions we asked? The Rebbe, on a daily basis, fielded hundreds of correspondence, hundreds of letters and phone calls. And many, many of them dealt with literally with matters of life and death, critical, serious issues. And with a strike of a pen, which the Rebbe did very quickly, the Rebbe, from what you understand, if you ever read Nissen Mendel's introduction to the letter and the spirit, you'll see that the Rebbe had a fixed amount of time for answering letters. And outside of that time, he didn't answer letters. So it was done very, very quickly. The Rebbe dealt with hundreds of questions of pikuach, nefesh, mamish, of life and death with the strike of a pen. And he was never wrong. No mistakes. It was godly. There's a story with the Tzemach Tzedek and the Maril, which I have no time to tell. I'll tell it to you on a different occasion. So he sings, Chaim Fogelman sings, how did he know all the answers to the questions that we asked? But he knew, yeah, he knew. And if he says Mashiach is coming now, he will be here at last. In other words, the nevuah, the prophecy for the coming of Mashiach. And the Rebbe made it very clear that it's even from Nevuah. It's a prophecy. Now, none of us are happy about the condition we're in right now. And we miss the Rebbe very, very much. And we miss the guilt and the pressure and the intensity that the Rebbe brought to our lives as Hasidim. When you were in the Rebbe's presence, you knew you're not good enough. And now we're all so in love with ourselves. That aspect, which is an avodah aspect, which is a real day-to-day practical challenge that we face, which makes us want the Geula so much. It makes us need the Rebbe so desperately. But the Rebbe says Mashiach is coming. If the Rebbe dedicated a second or two to your letter and he made a mark, and on that basis you changed careers, or you moved to a different city, or you did a certain medical procedure, or did not do a medical procedure, and you knew B'tachan Gomer that this is fact. And like there's a famous letter from the Rebbe to the Rebbe Chaim, which is printed in the Igros Kodesh. And you don't have to rely on drachim mesupokim le'ala sarsor le'ala shatchen. You can have a derech slula. Yesh Rebbe be Yisrael. And we all trust and trusted that pen. So the Mashiach Tzidkenu, which is the very, very essence of the Rebbe's whole life, And there's nothing that consumed the Rebbe more than Mashiach. Like the Rebbe wrote in the letter that before he went to Cheder, he was already fantasizing how Mashiach is going to look. As an infant, as a very young child, the Rebbe was trying to visualize what Mashiach means. And this is his whole world. And he says, Mashiach is coming, Mashiach is coming. And this Maamar is the juice, is the energy, is the inspiration that carries us to the Gula Amitas Vashlema. And like I said, this Maamar doesn't need to be explained. It speaks for itself. It is so the right medicine for the circumstance and the time that, like I said before, it speaks for itself. Now, like all my Maamar Chasidus, my Maamar are all based on my Maamar from previous Rabbeim. And if you're an expert, you can trace a Maamar all the way back to the source, to the Alter Rebbe. This Maamar Veatah Tetzaveh is based on a Maamar from the Friedrich Rebbe, which begins V'kibel HaYehudim, which is based on his Maamar's father's Maamar, the Rebbe Rashab, who also started Veatah Tetzaveh, and you can trace it all the way back, I think, till the Alter Rebbe and Teirah. I don't know if there's a Maamar from every Rebbe, but there's certainly a Maamar from more than half of the Rabbeim, and in some cases many more than one. And this theme, and this spirit, and each Rebbe takes the very same Maamar, but modifies it to be in his style, in his signin, and also to deal with the circumstances in which the Maamar was written. The previous Rebbe's Maamar begins with Kibul HaYehudim, because it was a time of Mesiras Nefesh, so he made it into a Mesiras Nefesh Maamar. And the Rebbe lives in a different type of Mesiras Nefesh, so instead of being V'kibul HaYehudim, it's a Veatah Tetzaveh Maamar. It's the same Maamar. The beginning of the Maamar changes based on the generation and the need and the circumstance and so forth. Now, like all of Torah, the real magic in learning is knowing how to ask a question. The difference, the tool, the channel, the vehicle into knowledge is questions. We have a Torah Shebeksav, we have a Chumash and a Novi, a Tanakh, which is the Word of God, Mamish. And as we analyze and question and challenge the words and the Torah Shabbat has opened up for us. Of course, it's b'derech shaylo tshuva. First it's dark and then it's light. First you don't know and then you know, because we're not Namadei Gav Rabbi or Rabbi Meir, that in a Meir his Sefer Torah said Kosnes Erebi Aleph. Some people look in the Torah, they don't see kashas, they don't see questions, they see answers. We see questions. And the genius of Torah is knowing what a question is. I'll tell you an interesting word. An interesting little thing. The Rebbe, of course, one of the great gifts that Rebbe gave us is Pirush Rashi ala Torah. The Rebbe's questions and answers. The Rebbe Sichas Anashi. Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Rav from Yeshiva University, Rabbi Yosef Deva Levi, also had a passion for Chumash Rashi. And he would give shiurim on it, he would talk to his students about it. So his students used to play games. They would learn a Rashi Sicha, and they would come to Rabbi Yashaber and ask him the Rebbe's questions. So they would ask a question and he would answer. They would ask a question, he would answer. And then they would ask a question and he would shout at them and say, Das is nish dein kasha. That question isn't yours, that you stole from somebody else. It's too good a question. The genius in Torah is a kasha, really. What separates a ben Torah from not a ben Torah, a lam if not a lam and not a teretz, it's to know what a question is. And what you learn as you journey through Torah is that Torah has levels. Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soit, Chsidis. And what separates one level from the next is very much what is a question and what is not a question. Many things that on a pshat level are not questions are questions on a drush level. And if they're not questions on a drush level, they're questions on a remez level. Remez, drush, and seid, and so forth. And Veatah Tetzaveh is no different. The genius of this Maamar is the questions. And if you see how the Maamar is structured, the Maamar is built in 3 tiers and 3 layers. And these 3 layers are divided by questions. Okay, if you look, line 64, the Rebbe asks questions. I'm sorry, line 116, the Rebbe asks questions. That question, this question here on line 116 is an opening to the second tier, to the second madrega of the Maamar. And then on line 229, you have again questions. And these 2 points from the questions on 229 and before that on 116 carry you over from the first level of the Maamar to the second level of the Maamar and then to the third level of the Maamar. That's the structure of this Maamar. And there are many very, very serious questions and sometimes very subtle questions. And yet these subtle questions are the keys that open up the flower that is this Maamar. This Maamar is extraordinary. It's incredible. It really is the kind of Maamar you learn it over and over and over again. You constantly find new things. And I always wonder if I would learn another Maamar as many times as I've learned this. I must have learned this Maamar 60 times. Without an exaggeration, maybe even more over the years. And yet every time you learn it, you find something else. My question to myself is, if I learned another Maamar, would it be as magical? And something tells me no, this is a special Maamar. It's distinctive. It's very, very unique. And one of the things that gives this Maamar its body is the questions that Rebbe asks and how the questions are logistically placed throughout the Maamar. But there's something very important that you need to know. That the most important question in the Maamar isn't even asked. It's taken for granted. And I want to begin with that question, with the question that the Rebbe does not even ask. And it's very, very important that we understand this question. Rashi asks this question. And Rashi gives an answer. The Maamar, without asking it, is asking the question, but giving a very different answer. And the reason the Maamar is giving a very different answer, because Chassidus is not Pshat Shel Mikra. On Pshat, the answer Rashi gives is sufficient. But on the level of Chassidus, that answer breaks down. It's not enough, and you need a deeper answer. And the question is that the two psukim with which Parshas Tetzaveh begins, Veatah Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yikru elecha Shem en zay ezach kosas lamar lahalas neir tomid. And the second pasuk says, Be'eyel meid b'chus lapareches yarech eisei aren uvonav me'erev ad beiked. If the Shem tomid is repeated almost word for word in Parshas Emor, in Sefer Yikra, in Leviticus, where it says, over there it doesn't say Veatah Tetzaveh. If V'daber ad Hashem al Moshe Leim, God says to Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Yidden Savas b'nei Yisrael v'yikru elecha Shem en zay ezach kosas lamar lahalas neir tomid, and so forth. And Rashi, not by us, but in Parshas Emor, asks the question, why repeat the exact same mitzvah, almost verbatim, in two different places in the Torah? Now there are many ideas that are repeated in Torah more than once, and Rashi will usually ask why the repetition, and Rashi will give an answer, Bishvil Davish and Chadesh Boy, or Lavar Lav Bishnei Lav, and Rashi has standard answers, either because in the other Pasha he adds a few little halachas, and those few little halachas justify repeating the whole Pasha, or that because it's repeated twice there's two lavim. But here Rashi asks the question, in Parshas Tetzaveh, the Pasha begins with instructions about preparing oil for the menorah. In Parshas Emor, almost word for word, the Torah repeats again how Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu to command the Jewish people to prepare oil to light the menorah. Why is it repeated twice? This is Rashi's question in Parshas Emor. And Rashi gives a simple answer, but an answer that really leaves you hungry, leaves you unsatisfied. The answer that Rashi gives is that the mitzvah of preparing oil for the menorah is in Parshas Emor, is in Leviticus, is the second time it's mentioned. In our Parsha, these two psukim are not instructions, but they're a story. They're a prediction. Veatah Tetzaveh doesn't mean you should command. Veatah Tetzaveh means you will command. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to prepare 13 or 15 things for the Mishkan. One of them was oil. So Hashem is telling Moshe, Veatah Tetzaveh, one day you'll know what to do with the oil. You'll tell the Jewish people to make oil for the menorah. In other words, Rashi holds that the first two psukim in Parshas Tetzaveh are not telling us what to do. They're telling us what we will be told to do later. The commandment is in Parshas Emor. And the first two psukim in Parshas Tetzaveh are simply saying what we're going to say in Parshas Emor. This is Rashi's teretz. And on a level of Pshat Shel Mikra, that's enough. It's enough of a teretz. The Torah can predict. The Torah can tell you today what it's going to tell you tomorrow. But Chassidus is not happy with that teretz. That's not enough of an answer on a pneumistic level. On a higher and a deeper level, the question remains, why repeat the same thing two times? And the Maimorim give an answer. And again, just like the question is unspoken, the answer is unspoken. But this answer is the heart of the Maimon. The answer is as follows. This is the Chassidus answer. Same question, new answer. That the mitzvah of preparing oil to light the menorah is in Parshas Emor, not in Parshas Tetzaveh. Parshas Tetzaveh is not about oil. And it's not about a mitzvah which God is giving Moshe Rabbeinu to pass along to the Jewish people. In Parshas Tetzaveh, the first two psukim in Parshas Tetzaveh are the Eibish's instructions to Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu his role. And Veatah Tetzaveh as Bnei Yisrael doesn't mean command the Jewish nation about oil and menorah and candles, but Veatah Tetzaveh means you should connect Yidden to the Eibishter. And every word of these two psukim, including the oil and the kasses and the lamoyer and the tamid and the erbat beker, reflect that principle. That in the beginning of Parashat Tetzaveh, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu's role. Or to say it in other words, it's as if you were to say, these are Hilchis Rebbe, Hilchis Neshama Klaus, Hilchis Nasi B'Yisrael. Where in the Torah does Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu what is his role? The answer is the first two psukim in Parashat Tetzaveh. In other words, the Torah has everything in it. The Torah speaks to the whole nation. The Torah speaks to the whole tribe of Levi. The Torah speaks to all the Kohanim, and the Torah speaks to the Kohen Gadol alone. And the Torah speaks to the Melech alone. There are sections in Torah spoken to individual people. Where in the Torah does the Torah speak to the Nasi B'Yisrael? The spiritual leader of the Jewish nation, that according to Kabbalah and Hasidus is called the Neshama Klalos, the general soul. Because all the Neshamas of his generation are sparks that come from his Shadish. And he has a mystical, he has a Neshama connection with all Yidden. Where in the Torah does the Torah instruct on Nasi B'Yisrael to what his mandate is and what his mission is? And the answer is the first two psukim in our Parashat Veatah Tetzaveh. And location. The fact that the place in the Chumash where God Almighty chooses to communicate to Moshe Rabbeinu's tasks could not have been more precisely determined. It's the beginning of Parashat Tetzaveh. You're wondering why? I'll tell you why. Parashat Tetzaveh is the only parasha in the Chumash where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned. Why? Because in next week's parasha, Parashat Kisisa, Moshe Rabbeinu was confronted with the annihilation of the Jewish people because they made the golden calf. And Moshe stands his ground. Moshe Rabbeinu says to God Almighty, you gave me a task to look after the Jews. And I'm going to look after the Jews even when I have to fight with you and not allow you to destroy the body, the entity that I was given for safekeeping. And Moshe says to the Eibishter, on your command, I'm not going to let you destroy the nation even though you want to destroy them. And one of Moshe Rabbeinu's arguments is, if you intend on destroying this nation, please take my name out of your Sefer Torah. I don't want to be mentioned as the leader who didn't look after his flock. So of course Chazal say that when a tzaddik says a inyan, even al tnai, even on a condition, it leaves a reishim, a trace, a mark. So if Moshe said to have my name erased from the Torah, there has to be some place in the Torah where Moshe's name does not appear. And the answer is in Parshas Tetzaveh, from Shmois, when Moshe Rabbeinu's name is mentioned the first time, until B'zei Sabracha, Moshe Rabbeinu appears in every single sefer in the Chumash, except Tetzaveh. Now, of course, the joke goes, the Gleichwertel is, that it comes Parshas Kisisa. Moshe says, take my name out of the Chumash. And Hashem says, okay, so I got to take him out of one Parsha. Let's try Vayakhel. Take him out of Vayakhel. He says, nah, I got time. Let's leave, we'll do it next week. You get the Pekud. Hashem says, maybe I should take him out of Pekud. He says, nah, I got time. And every parasha, Hashem says later, till you get to Tetzaveh, there's no place to go. The next week is already Kisisa. So the Eibishter has no choice. It's the last parasha available to the Eibishter to remove Moshe Rabbeinu's name before he comes around again to Kisisa. So Veatah Tetzaveh has no mention of Moshe Rabbeinu's name. But of course, that's a nice word, for whatever it's worth, but the Rebbe has something much, much deeper and much more profound on it. And it's in the Likutei Sichos, of course. And that is that Parshas Tetzaveh always coincides with Zayin Adar. And in a leap year it coincides with Zayin Adar Rishon, that the Rebbe holds is more important in many aspects. What happened Zayin Adar? Moshe Rabbeinu was born and Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. And the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned in the Parsha associated with the Histalkos of Moshe Rabbeinu was very, very consistent. Why? So B'Pashtus, it means a person passes away, so they're gone, right? But of course, that's not what we believe. We believe a tzaddik never passes away. But what with the Vart is Azoy. Every neshama has a name. And if you learn Chassidus, you know that the name goes to the very deepest depths of the neshama. The name goes to very deep in the neshama. However, although the name goes to very deep in the neshama, the name is connected to the guf. In other words, the name is not connected to the neshama per se. The name is the lavush ha'atzmi of the slapshus of the neshama in the guf. When a neshama comes into a body, it needs many layers, many garments. The first layer is the name. A neshama in Gan Eden doesn't have a name. V'had raya, when a neshama is nizgalgal, when a neshama comes back in a reincarnation, if the name has to do with the neshama per se, all the Gilgulim should share the same name. And yet that's not the case. Like Moshe Rabbeinu was Hevel, and Shimon Bar Yochai, and Hillel, and some say also Eiv. Moshe Rabbeinu and later Gilgulim had different names. If the name reflects the essence of the neshama, every Gilgul should be the same. So Chassidus explains that the name is the essence of the most essence-like garment of the neshama, in as much as the neshama connects to a guf. So when a neshama is Eila HaShamayma, when a neshama departs from this world, ascends heavenward, and leaves the guf, it goes above the name, higher than the name. Veatah Tetzaveh, you should connect. And the fact that Parshas Veatah Tetzaveh has no mention of Moshe Rabbeinu's name, because in this Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu was raised above the Madrega where he has a name. And on the level above where Moshe Rabbeinu has a name, God Almighty tells them, Veatah Tetzaveh, your task is l'kasher l'char b'Yisrael l'meid ein sof, to bind and to connect Yidden with Atmas Ein Sof Baruch. So the background to the Maamar fits exactly. Remember again, the most important thing I said so far is that the most important question on this Maamar is unspoken. And that is, why is the Torah repeat the same thing 2 times? And the answer is because here it's not talking about oil at all. Here it's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's role of connecting Yidden to the Meibish. Why is it in this week's Parsha? Because this week's Parsha reveals the very essence of Moshe Rabbeinu. How Moshe Rabbeinu is higher than a name, and that's why it's called Veatah. It's connected to his historicals. Need I say more? Doesn't that immediately show how profound and how relevant this Maamar is to the moments we find ourselves in? This is the Maamar of his kashas, the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu connects Yidden to the Eibishter on a level of Kvayachol. Moshe Rabbeinu is higher than having a name. Now, in explaining the role of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Maamar translates Veatah Tetzaveh as Bnei Yisrael, which doesn't mean you should command. It means you should connect Yidden to Hashem. So there are 2 expressions into what this connection means. There's an initial expression and then there's a later expression. The initial expression is, quote, Lekasher u'lechaber es Yisrael l'meid ein sof. If you have the Maamar handy, it's line 20 and 21. He connects, he ties, and he binds into the Ein Sof. What's Veatah Tetzaveh? Mekasher and mechaber es l'meid ein sof. He ties and he binds into the Eibishter. A tzaddik, a Moshe Rabbeinu, what's his role? To connect you into the Eibishter. That's number 1. But in the next Perek, in Sif Gimel, on line 42 and 43, he changes and uses a different expression. That the role of Moshe Rabbeinu is that he's zon u'mefanes es Yisrael b'inyan amunah. Zon means he provides food, mezoines, food. Parnasa means he provides other needs like clothing and a home. B'inyan amunah, about the question of faith. Once the Rebbe introduces us to the second language, zon u'mefanes es Yisrael b'inyan ein sof, the first language, al-makasher mechaber es l'meid ein sof, falls away. And that becomes the basis for this Maamar, that the role of Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the essence role of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's zon u'mefanes es Yisrael b'inyan amunah, he nourishes and he provides parnasa to Bnei Yisrael in matters of faith. And the Rebbe makes a very, very important point. And the point is, a Yid does not need amunah from anybody, not even from Moshe Rabbeinu. We do not need to be given faith. Faith in a Jew is ma'aminim, b'nei ma'aminim. We're believers, descendants of believers. We inherited this from Avraham Avinu. Shuri mereish Amana. Avraham Avinu was called the reish ma'aminim, the head, the first of the believers, and he gave us amunah. The issue of a Raya Yisrael, of a Yiddish shepherd, of a Yiddish nasi and a Rebbe is that a Yid has amunah, but the amunah could be makif. I could believe in God and do whatever I want. Like the famous Gemara, which the Rebbe quotes in the letter he wrote to Ram Kalasker. Gan vapum machtarta rachamona karye. A thief stands at the opening to a tunnel that he dug, he broke and entered to steal from somebody else. And of course, as it says in Chazal, he's more afraid of another human being than he's afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'yatzmei. But the Gemara says, this man who breaks and enters in somebody else's home, who is coming to steal is also prepared to kill or be killed. So a man who is breaking and entering is a ganef for sure, a thief with intent, and a murderer if the circumstance will arise. So he's a bad guy, and he stands by the entrance to this tunnel that he dug to break and enter, to steal and even kill, and he davens to God Almighty, prays to God that he should succeed. How could anybody be such a hypocrite to believe in God enough to pray, and the prayer is, help me sin? And the answer is, because that you can believe in God, then be its makif. In other words, Rabbi say, Emunah has a huge upside and a huge downside. There's something very, very special about Emunah, and there's also something very, very challenging about Emunah. As I like to say, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? And of course, it doesn't make a difference because they're both the same thing. The greatest thing about faith is you're born with it. The worst thing, the most challenging thing about faith is you're born with it. Now, why is the greatest thing about faith that you're born with it? Because you don't have to work. In a Jew, faith needs no proof. By a Yid Emunah is because my father was a believer. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, believers, descendants of believers. The meaning of the word Emunah means a connection to Hashem which is higher than reason. That's the meaning of the word. A connection to Hashem which is higher than reason. As this Maamar explains at length. If a person develops Emunah from Seichel, uses his mind to understand and to prove, and from his mind he tries to ascend to higher than his mind, that higher than his mind is always held back by the fact that it came from the mind. In a Jew, in Jewish people, it's ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. We believe because Avraham Avinu, he taka struggled with his mind to determine that there is a God, and that the Eibush is a master over the world, and all the other things that Avraham Avinu determined in his very, very illustrious and challenged life. We inherited it. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. So we're born with faith. That's the best thing about it. But it's also the worst thing about it, because human nature is anything you have for free, you take for granted. Like the Lashon HaGemara, Asya de Mogen b'Mogen Mogen Shaveh. A doctor who heals for nothing is worthless. Faith we're born with, which means we can take it for granted. I believe in God and do whatever I want. And therefore you need a Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is not giving you faith. The faith is in the neshama. The faith you have from Avraham Avinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is simply Ure'ei Emunah. He shepherds faith. He nourishes faith. He takes the faith which is in our neshama and brings it into us. He reveals it and he educates us and he inspires us that we should believe in such a way that we should not have this hypocrisy. That if the Eibush tells us to do something, we do it. And if Hashem says not to do something, we don't do it. So the Moshe Rabbeinu and the Ispashtus of the Moshe Shebachol Dara V'Dara and the subsequent Moshe Rabbeinu, all later generations, their role is not to give you faith, but that the faith which God Almighty gave us as a gift from Avraham Avinu should be internalized. And that's the meaning of this phrase, line 42. Moshe Rabbeinu is zon and mefanas as Yisrael b'yin amunah. That's actually line 39 and 40. He nourishes, which is pnimius, and he provides parnasa, which is makifim, as Yisrael, the Jewish people, b'yin amunah in matters of faith. And that's the heart of the Maamar. The heart of the Maamar is the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu gives us emunah. And of course, when you say Moshe Rabbeinu gives us emunah, it doesn't mean he's creating our faith. It means that the faith which we already have, he has to internalize. And this is what tzaddikim do. Tzaddikim give yidden emunah. When you talk about a Rebbe, the Rebbe, you could say there's 1,000,001 stories that reflect this idea that the function of a Rebbe is to give yidden emunah. I'll just tell you a most remarkable story. A most remarkable story. There's a woman I know, she's a former student of mine, who went to a very, very, very secular university in America. I mean, all universities are secular. This is especially secular. So secular that on her campus, there was no Hillel house. Because the Hillel house had no customers. Nobody was interested. They had what was called a bayit. It was a co-ed Jewish home or apartment. And Jewish boys and girls used to meet there. And the shliach, who was next to this campus, used to come to this bayit and plead and beg the boys and girls that should come for free food, for a Friday night dinner, free food, which usually works with college students. These college students were just interested even in free food. So this woman tells me years later she did a little hisbonenus, she thought back, and she realized that every single member, every single boy and girl that was in that bayit is today frum. And it was incredulous to her, shocking to her, because these were really, really far away people. So she met the shliach, or she called the shliach, and she asked him if he wrote their names into the Rebbe. And he said, that's the first thing I do. I meet a new Jew, I wrote his name into the Rebbe. Wrote his name, you know what that means? Just by mentioning names to the Rebbe, the neshama was triggered, and years later, it brought them back to tshuva. I'll tell you a cute little story about Dermonen, mentioning in front of the Rebbe. Moshe Dayan was wounded in the campaign of 56, the Sinai campaign. So the Rebbe was obviously talking about Eretz Yisrael by the Fabrengen, so somebody mentioned that Moshe Dayan was hurt. I needed a full shlema. So the Rebbe says, Via Hester, what's his name? What's his name? Nobody knew his name. Shmoy v'Shemimi, his name and his mother's name, nobody knew. So finally the Rebbe says, Freg Moshe Dubinsky, Shmoy v'Shemimi is the Zelba v'Moshe Dayan. That Moshe Dubinsky was sitting at the Fabrengen, he's a Kohen. I don't know Moshe Dayan was a Kohen, but Moshe Dubinsky was a Kohen. Ask Moshe Dubinsky, his name and his mother's name are identical. Now let me ask you a dumb question. If the Lubavitcher Rebbe is the only one in the room who knows that Moshe Dubinsky and Moshe Dayan share the same name and same mother's name, why does the Rebbe have to ask Moshe Dubinsky? Don't you think he knows? And the answer is Medav Der Monen. By a Rebbe you have to mention. And by a Rebbe the most important thing is Shmoy v'Shemimei. You write a pidyon nefesh, as opposed to a letter. In a pidyon nefesh, the only words that really matter are your name and your mother's name, because that's your neshama. That's the ticket. That's the label. That's the identifier of your neshama. And a Rebbe tzaddik, who's a neshama person, that's all he needs. He needs the Shmoy v'Shemimei. Shmoy v'Shemimei, with that he can take you out of all kinds of problems, ruchnistic problems, and gashmistic problems, but you have to mention. You see films. People come to the Rebbe by dollars and they mention people's names. The Rebbe says, what's his full name? And they don't know. So the Rebbe will tell them what the name is and will ask them to repeat it back to him. Because this is a Rebbe. There's a neshama person who connects to neshamas Yisrael, and in so doing, he zon l'mefanas Yisrael b'inyan amun, he strengthens our amun. But there's something very, very important about this Maamar. And I believe, and of course, you're all entitled to disagree. But to me, the key point of this entire Maamar is the following. There's a havamin and there's a maskana. There is a first understanding of these words, Zon Mefanas Yisrael Binyan Amuna, and then there is a second understanding of these words, Zon Mefanas Yisrael Binyan Amuna. Let me show them to you inside. The first one is, let's look, I told you before, 42 and 43. Look line 39 and 40. It says, Zon Mefanas Es Yisrael Binyan Amuna. He nourishes, which is Pnimius, provides Parnasa, which is Levush and Bais Makifim, the Jewish people in matters of faith. This is the first expression. On line 174 and 175, he changes. Look, read the words. She'iked, the word is italicized. She'iked ha'inyan derayim mehem nahu. The primary role of the trusted shepherd of the Moshe Rabbeinu and the Moshe Rabbeinu every generation is, quote, Zeshu zon umefadnes es ha'amuna atzma, that he nourishes, which is Pnimius, and he provides Parnasa, which is Makifim, the faith itself. What's the difference between the first version, line 39, and the second version, 174? In the first version, the Zon Mefanas Es Yisrael Be'inyan Ha'amunah. In the second version, he says, Zon Mefanas Es Ha'amunah. Now, between line 39 and line 174, questions were asked. And the answer to all those questions that were asked is this change. That instead of saying Zon Mefanas Es Yisrael Be'inyan Ha'amunah, you say Zon Mefanas Es Ha'amunah Atzma. What's the difference? I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is, does the Rebbe have one or two tasks? Does the Rebbe and Nasi Yisrael have one mission or two missions? The Maamar begins with the presumption that the Rebbe has one mission. And that one mission is, Zon Mefanas Es Yisrael Binyan Amunah. He provides Mezenis and Parnasa to Klal Yisrael in matters of faith. In other words, he's a leader. And leaders lead by speaking out. Leaders lead by making fabrengens. Leaders lead by writing letters. Leaders lead by reaching people. And his role is, what he does at these fabrengens and in these letters, in these various forms of communication, is he strengthens Amunah. Zon Mefanas Yisrael Binyan Amunah. He comes to Yidden and he rallies them to believe in the Eibishter. This was the first understanding of the role of a Rebbe and Nasi Urei Amunah. The Rebbe asked questions on this interpretation, on the Maamar and on the interpretation and so forth. And therefore the Rebbe changed. And he says, Moshe Rabbeinu has not one role but two roles. And the two roles have an inner role and an outer role. Something that you see and something that you don't see. And as it turns out, the inner role, what you don't see, is far more important and also far more unifying in the variety of different Moshe Rabbeinus than the second and secondary role, which is the overt and visible role. What's the inner job of a Rebbe? The inner job of a Rebbe is, quote, Shuzon, Umafanis, Es Emunah Atzma. He gives mezainis and panasa, he gives food and clothing and shelter to Emunah itself. What does that mean? Emunah means chaya, or which in our mind is called mazel. Because of chaya, because of mazel, we have emunah. Mazle chazi, my mazel, which means my subconscious, sees God. Because my subconscious sees God, I believe. Now let's explain. If I could see God consciously, I wouldn't have to believe, I know. But it's my subconscious that sees, not I. My subconscious sees, my mazel sees. Because she sees, I believe. Believe means I accept something which I cannot see. Says the Rebbe, however, when your mazel, when your subconscious sees godliness and you believe in the Eibishter, it's like somebody tells you there's a God. Your mazel is somebody else. Your subconscious is separate from your consciousness. And when your subconscious taps you on the shoulders, there's a God, believe me, I saw him. So you consciously believe in the Eibishter and do whatever you want. You stand at the opening of a machteres and pray for God's help because you believe in God. But you're asking him to help you violate his commandments because the emunah from the madrega of mazel is exactly that. It's mazel. It's higher than consciousness. So there's a Moshe Rabbeinu that zon numefanes esu emunah. It has to strengthen the emunah that exists in the mazel. Strengthen the emunah that exists in the chaya. And what that is, says the Maamar, is to join the yechida with the chaya, to join the pintali, the essence of the neshama, which is not a higher level of the neshama, but the essence of all the madregis of the neshama, which makes it linked also to the naran, also to the consciousness of the person. So, according to the conclusion, the answer of this Maamar, the inner role of a Rebbe is zonu mefares es hamuna atz, means he nourishes and provides for your chaya that it be linked to the yechida. And when you're chaya that sees God, is linked to the yechida, which is one with God, so then because you see in God, you don't only believe in God, you do what God says. The emunah is nimshach apnimius. So the chiddush of the Maamar is that Moshe Rabbeinu has an inner role. And there's several important aspects about this inner role of Moshe Rabbeinu. Number one, this all Moshe Rabbeinu's share. There are differences between Moshe Rabbeinu and Moshe Rabbeinu, as you'll see soon. But the differences are in the secondary aspects, as you'll see soon. In the primary aspect, which is the neshama idea, the inner idea, every Moshe Rabbeinu has the same task as every other Moshe Rabbeinu, to connect Yechida, the Etzem HaNeshama, with the Mazel, with the Chaya. The job of a Rebbe and Nasi B'Yisrael is to tickle, is to trigger the Neshama's essence, that it should connect to the Neshama Malubeshes Baguf, and we should become engaged Jews. This role, Zonu Mefanes Esu Amuna Atzpa, to join the Yechida with Chaya, is true of every single Nasi B'Yisrael, every Rebbe. But then he has a secondary role. The secondary role is what we said at the beginning of the Maamar, Zonu Mefanes Es Yisrael. A Rebbe, besides for the fact that he's connected to the Neshama, and he connects the Neshama to the Eibishter, connects the Neshama to the Eibishter within ourselves, there is also the leadership role. He's a Rebbe. He's not a hidden tzaddik. He leads, he verbrings, he instructs, he commands, he demands, he insists, he loves. This is the second role of a Rebbe. This is the conscious role of the Rebbe. This is the leadership role of the Rebbe. And here we say, not Zon Mefanes Es Emuna Atzma, but Zon Mefanes Es Yisrael Binyan Emuna. He sits by Fabrengen and strengthens our Emuna in the Mebishn. The Rebbe sits by Fabrengen, writes letters, and he pounds into us not just ideas and philosophies and a derech hachayim, but Poshet Kipshutei Emuna in the Eibishter. I heard the story. And I'm going to tell the story without names, although I'm almost certain the story is true, but until I'm absolutely certain, I'll leave it this way. There was a Yid who became a Lubavitcher. It was not a Lubavitcher. It was a Chassidish Yid, a non-Lubavitcher. And he was acquainted with a very, very big Gaon, a very famous Rav who lives in Williamsburg, a big Talmud Chacham. And he proposed to this Gadol, to this Yid, that he should listen to a Fabrengen of the Rebbe on the radio. This goes back to the 80s, early 80s. And this Gadol, this Rav, who's still alive, listened to the Fabrengen. The next day, this Yid who had been by the Fabrengen came in to see him. He says, "No, you listen to the Fabring on the radio. What do you have to say about the Lubavitcher Rebbe?" And he said something very, very wise, very profound, very intuitive, very connected. He said, "You listen to the Rebbe talk." And of course, the Rebbe quotes from memory, Psukim and Marei Chazal, on Ashir and on Abreg, non-stop. He says, but when you hear the Rebbe say a Maamar Chazal, you hear the Rebbe saying it as if you're hearing it directly from God Almighty. The Rebbe doesn't say a Gemara, or a Medrash, or a Mishnah, or a Braise, or a Pasuk. He roars it. He says it in such a way that in the words that he says, you hear his faith in God. He's giving you emunah in every word. The Rebbe's style of speech was not meant to be interesting and engaging. It was meant to be sacred. And when the Rebbe talks, and you listen, and you hear, and you absorb, he's pounding into you, besides for the ideas and the instruction, pashat emunah in the Meibush. In as much as the secondary role is concerned, every Moshe Rabbeinu is different. And that's this Maamar. You want to know what the Maamar is about? It's about Veatah Tetzaveh, which means that Moshe Rabbeinu's role is connected to Atmos and Zav Baruch Hu. How? By not giving them emunah, but by strengthening their emunah. And that there is a primary role and a secondary role. The primary role is Lozul and Lefanes Esha Emunah Atzma, to connect the mazel with the Yechidah Shebenefesh, so we should really believe. And believe in such a way that we're going to practice what the Eibishter preaches. And this is connecting Yechidah to Chaya. It's a totally subliminal event. A tzaddik can connect your neshama with the Eibishter, you'll never know it. A tzaddik can connect the whole generation of Jews with the Eibishter, and they'll never know it. And then there is a secondary role. The secondary role is the leadership role, where he pontificates and he preaches and he demands Yidden Zamun in the Eibishter. And this is where every Moshe Rabbeinu was different. And this Maamar of ours, in addition to giving us the core idea, which is that Moshe Rabbeinu has not one task, but two tasks. And in as much as the inner task is concerned, every Moshe Rabbeinu has Kosas Lamar as a connection to the Yechidah Shebenefesh. But in addition to that internal task, deeper task, he has an external task, where each Rebbe is different. And the Rebbe develops at length the various roles that the various Rabbeim played. In other words, over the ages, he speaks about three Moshe Rabbeinus, and he explains the distinct role of one Moshe Rabbeinu versus a second Moshe Rabbeinu versus a third Moshe Rabbeinu, based on the circumstances that Jewish people were in and how he was able to inspire them. And this is, so to speak, the body of the Maamar. I gave you the essence of the Maamar, and I'm giving you the form of the Maamar, the three Moshe Rabbeinus. And let's talk through them. Let's talk about the three Moshe Rabbeinus. The three Moshe Rabbeinus in this Maamar, again, let's go back to basics, right? What's the idea of Moshe? Moshe is the Jewish leader. He's not only the Jewish leader practically, he's the Jewish leader spiritually. His neshama is called the neshama clause, a general soul, and Einei Ha'edeh, like it says in Sfarim and Chazal, and his neshama is the source of all of the neshamas of the Yidden of his generation. And his role as Moshe Rabbeinu, which is to connect Yidden to the Rebbe, which is that his neshama is connected to the neshamas of all the Yidden in his generation, is to connect them to the Eibishter. But not all generations are the same. And because not all generations are the same, how and what Moshe Rabbeinu does in connecting the Yidden to the Eibishter changes from generation to generation. And our Maamar gives us three models. Model number one is Moshe Rabbeinu HaGashmi, the physical man Moshe Rabbeinu. Model number two is Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai HaTzadik, who led the Jewish nation during the time of Haman and Esther. But during the time of duress, during the time that the Jews were anticipating to lose their lives, God forbid. And the Rebbe equates this Moshe Rabbeinu to the previous Rebbe in his generation. And then there's a third Moshe Rabbeinu. The third Moshe Rabbeinu is Mordechai HaYehudi, after the miracle of Purim already occurred, and the condition of Jewish people went from being terrible to being terrific. And Mordechai still inspired and challenged the Jewish people in another way to be made by them emunah. Those are the three Moshe Rabbeinus. Moshe Rabbeinu, the physical Moshe Rabbeinu, Mordechai during the time of the Gezerah, and Mordechai after the Nes. And what the Maamar does, he talks us through these three Moshe Rabbeinus. And remember again, this Maamar's foundation is that Moshe has two roles and not one. And the first role, which is Lazdun Lefanis Es Hamuna Atzma, there is no difference between Moshe and Mordechai after the Gezerah. It's all the same. All the difference are in the secondary role, Lazdun Lefanis Es Yisrael Binyan Emuna. Each one does it differently. Number one, Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu was the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael in the best of times. They lived in the desert. They ate water they ate man from heaven. The water from the Veatah Tetzaveh Miriam. Then Ani Yaakov, the Gemara says, all they did all day and all night for 40 years was study Torah. It was boring. They were the highest madregas. So exactly what did Moshe Rabbeinu do in as much as Moshe Rabbeinu was their Rebbe? And the answer is Moshe made farbrengens. How often Moshe made farbrengens? I have a sneaking suspicion that in the earlier years he made fewer farbrengens, and towards the end of his Nesias, he started farbrengen much more often, even every single Shabbos. And Moshe Rabbeinu, at all of his farbrengens, would look at his constituents, he would look at his generation, he would look at all the neshamas pratis that come from him, and he would ask them a poshta kash. Your holiness, your piety, your scholarship, your devoutness, is it you, or is it the clouds? The Jewish nation was living in clouds, literally and figuratively. Living in clouds, Anani Yaakov, which dry cleaned their clothing and kept the temperature constant and took care of venomous denizens of the desert, flattened out the hills and the valleys and so forth and so on. And the Jews lived in a cloud. Physically and spiritually, their lives were perfect. The bubble. And Moshe says, how can you determine whether all the piety and goodness that you were doing and partaking of is a reflection of your effort, your own personal interest, or is it simply because in the cloud everybody is you're from too? And of course, what would the Jewish people respond to that question? How can you know that? When you live in the desert and life is perfect and everything you possibly need and all you do is study Torah, how can you possibly find out if I would step outside that cloud and be alone, if I would change or not? Impossible. And Moshe Rabbeinu said the answer is das. Das means that in addition to understanding God and godliness and believing in what we understand, there needs to be connection. Das means connection. And das is achieved through his abundance, through meditation. That when a person will sit for long periods of time, and instead of learning Torah, he will think about God, he can create a bridge between his mind and his soul. So that although he's living in a cloud, and everybody around him is involved in Yiddishkeit, and it's so conceivable, it's quite likely in fact, that his entire Yiddishkeit is not a reflection of his efforts, but of the world in which he finds himself, through avoid the pnimius, with the use of his mind and the arousal of his heart and the access of his soul, he can affect that his relationship to the Eibusha should be based on his das. In other words, it should be a personal relationship as opposed to a relationship based on the environment. And Moshe Rabbeinu preached this for 40 years. Moshe Rabbeinu said to Klal Yisrael, you have it very, very good. So good that Jews will never in history ever again have it this good. Are you worshiping God or you're reacting to your environment? And the message was, by using das, you can deepen your connection to the Eibishter and make your connection to the Eibishter personal as opposed to communal. So the Maamar says like this. Moshe Rabbeinu's first role was to connect Yechidah with Chaya. And as much as this is concerned, every Nasi, including Moshe Rabbeinu, belongs to the Last Maamar that reaches Yechidah B'Nefesh. But then there was Moshe Rabbeinu's farbrengens, Moshe Rabbeinu's overt leadership. Moshe Rabbeinu sat with the Yidden who were in the highest madregas and spoke to them about das. And some of them achieved it, or many of them achieved it, or all of them achieved it. But the das was only an experience of their subconscious, not of their essence. In other words, by Moshe Rabbeinu connecting the Yechidah to the Chaya came into the Naran. The Jewish people felt their subconscious sees God, and therefore they believe. When the Yechidah was connected to Chaya, the fact that the subconscious sees God affected the Jewish people should believe practically in the Eibishter. But Moshe Rabbeinu, in the best of times, could not reveal Yechidah B'Nefesh. He could reveal only Chaya, only Mazel. This is the first Moshe Rabbeinu. But then there's the second Moshe Rabbeinu. And the second Moshe Rabbeinu in history was Mordechai during the time of the decree of Haman. which means in plain English, the entire Jewish nation was trapped. The Gemara says that as a rule, when God Almighty exiles Jewish people, He scatters them. And in some places it's described as one of the most painful aspects of our exile is our dispersion, our diaspora. But in other places it's described as one of the great blessings in disguise. Means one part of the world the Jewish people are suffering, and someplace else they're flourishing, they're thriving. In the Purim story there was no someplace else. He was Meshul Bekipa. Achashverosh was. And the entire Jewish nation was cornered. Haman was killing them. And of course, when you read the story of Purim as we all understand it, we get the impression that there was no choice. There was no recourse. Haman was killing Jews, religious or irreligious. He was just killing. But in the in Teireh it says, and there's other Svarim who say a similar idea, that Haman wasn't killing all Jews, he was killing only religious Jews. As it's explained in the previous Rebbe Sicha, Purim, Tafshin Aleph, and others. We spoke about this in the Purim classes that we did, the Yiddish Maimorim that we did. The Jews were called Ivrim, Hebrews. And the significance of this term means foreigners, Ever Acher, the other side. But Hebrews started becoming very, very assimilated culturally, and even they started intermarrying, Rahman al-Islam. So the people who were holding steadfast to Teiras Meisha changed their name from Ivri to Yehudi. And as the Gemara says, the meaning of the word Yehudi is Akefer B'Avodah Zarah. You deny idol worship, and as the Rebbe loves to add, so you're B'derech Mamela Meida B'chol HaTeira Kula. If you deny idol worship, that means automatically you accept the whole Teira. And they took for themselves the name Yehudi, which of course explains one of the most obvious questions on the whole Megillah. How could Mordechai HaTzadik be called a Yehudi? He wasn't from Shevet Yehuda, he was from Shevet Binyamin. And of course the answer is Yehuda does not mean Judean, from Judah. It means a Jew. That's a Kefer B'Avodah Zarah. And Haman was killing Jews. If you have that version of the story, you understand that Jews had recourse. Change your passport from Yehudi to Ivri and save your life. Moreover, not only did the Jews be Meisa Nefesh, that they wouldn't dissociate from their identity as Jews and become Hebrews, but they insisted on being proud Jews, to identify as Jews, even though it cost them their lives. But they practiced Torah and mitzvahs, and they did it in public, which was several levels of Mesiras Nefesh. Haman was killing them even before the date set for the annihilation of Nachman, the son of Seni Yisrael, if they were practicing Yiddishkeit, and yet they did it, and they did it in a public way, and so forth. It was enormous Mesiras Nefesh. All of this Mesiras Nefesh was inspired from Mordechai. Mordechai was the Rebbe, the Nasi, and in addition to the Pnimiyastic task, to the Neshama task, which is Zonu Mefanes Esa Emuna Atzma, which is identical in Moshe and Mordechai, to connect the Yechida to the Chaya, there was also the Zonu Mefanes Es Yisrael Binyan Emuna. Mordechai made Fabrengens, Mordechai wrote letters, I don't know if he had hookups, but he communicated with Jews. And what was the message? Imdu Hachin Kulchem, stand ready for Mesiras Nefesh Al Kiddush Hashem. And the entire generation stood in the readiness of Mesiras Nefesh Al Kiddush Hashem. Says the Maamar, this is called Kosis Lamoir. That because Mordechai was a Rebbe in times of duress, and there was a Kosis, the Jews were crushed and threatened, and their lives were at risk. Moir, he didn't only connect to the Yechida, so that the Yechida could be connected to the subconscious, the Mchaya, which would be revealed in the consciousness in the Naran. He revealed the Yechida itself. In other words, Mordechai was in this aspect higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu revealed in Yidden only Chaya, Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai HaTzadik revealed in the consciousness of a Jew, the Madrega of Yechida. And this is the second Moshe Rabbeinu. A Moshe Rabbeinu who actually, in his secondary role, in his revealed role, in his leadership role, in his Zon no Mefanes Es Yisrael, Binyan Emunah role, revealed the Yechida itself. Kosis Lamoir. But the Rebbe says this too is limited. Why? He has a phrase. This Maamar is full of new ideas. Full of ideas that I think have never been said before in Chassidus. Line 328. It says, B'negeya l'keichas ha'kiluyim b'kumei da b'nesef. Or the phrase is, L'gabe keichas ha'kiluyim, hukumei da b'nesef l'gabe keichas ha'kiluyim. What this means is as follows. You have a Yegila of Yechida. You reveal the Yechida Shabbat Nefesh, yeah? What happens to your mind and your heart when the Yechidah Shebenefesh is revealed? You have a brain, you reason. You have a heart, you feel. And then Mordechai rouses and Yidden are readiness for Mesiras Nefesh, and Jews are ready to jump into fire. What happens to the brain and the heart? It's pushed aside. The brain isn't functioning and the heart isn't functioning. There's only Mesiras Nefesh. So there's a Gili of Yechidah, Kosis Lamoed. You're revealing the Yechidah, which is higher than Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu could only reveal the Chaya. But you're revealing the Yechidah in such a way that it pushes aside the conscious person. It pushes aside the Naran. The Yechidah is so strong that the conscious person is shut down. And the Rebbe says there's a painful proof for this, or a painful example for this. He says that Rabbi Yidden lived in Russia, and they were Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem day after day, and year after year, and decade after decade. And then they came to America, and Ein Royim Etzlam Kol Kach Inyan Mesiras Nefesh. The Rebbe is very gentle. He says the bottom line, they came to America and they became Americans. What happened to the Mesiras Nefesh? And the answer is because the Mesiras Nefesh pushed aside their humanity, their mind, their heart, their senses. When you come to a place where you don't have such fears, the humanity returns. The humanity was never Mesiras Nefesh. The humanity was simply shut down because of the stress and the fear of the Soviet system. And therefore, when that pressure goes away and the humanity returns, there's no Mesiras Nefesh at all. And therefore, the Rebbe says there's a third Moshe Rabbeinu. And this third Moshe Rabbeinu was Mordechai HaTzadik, Mordechai Yehudi after the Nes. And forgive me for interpreting, but this is not an interpretation, this is Pashut Pshat in the Maamar. Mordechai, the first Mordechai, is the Friedrich Rebbe. And the second Mordechai, the one we're discussing now, this is the Rebbe. This is the Rebbe's Veatah Tetzaveh, the Rebbe speaking to us and telling us what is his role. Haman tried to destroy the Jewish nation. The Jewish nation stood in a readiness for Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem for a year, 11 months. They didn't think for a moment about abandoning their belief in God Almighty and their practice of Torah and mitzvahs. And Makal Kilas Barab. And then Haman was killed. And his children were killed. And the Agagites were killed. And the condition of Yidden in the empire of Achashverosh, which embraced the whole world, changed from extreme to extreme. They went from being the bottom to being the top. They suddenly became the most favored group within the empire of Persia. And now what? And now what? Mordechai makes a fabringen again. And he sends letters again. And he inspires Yidden again. He says, don't misunderstand the life we're living now for Geula. It's not Geula, it's a different Golus. We're still in Golus. But now it's not a Golus where our lives are at risk. We're in Golus where our souls are at risk. Why? Because life is good. It's very obvious that the Megillah Esther finishes with Achashverosh collecting taxes. Why does the Megillah finish with Achashverosh collecting taxes? It wants to teach us the message, Akate Yavdei Achashverosh Anan. After all miracles said and done, we're still in Golus. And Mordechai says to Yidden, life is good, huh? It's Golus. How could you be happy about life in Golus? And Mordechai Yehudi rallies Yidden to have a new concept of a Mesiras Nefesh. But this is much more sensitive. This is a Mesiras Nefesh to live in a Golus of Ashiris, to have everything you could want, Begashmias, and even Beruchnias, materially and even spiritually, and be so desperate to go out of Golus that it's Kosas Lamoy. Like the Rebbe says in the Maamar, on line 272, Miseh Atzme is in ganzen Zertreselt, Kosas. He's completely shaken. He has no peace. Why am I in Golus? The Rebbe says it's possible for a Yid to have everything, Begashmis and Beruchnis. And the Rebbe goes into a lot of subtlety and detail and nuance. There's an incredible number of Chedushim in this Maamar. And yet, his desire for Geula, in other words, his sense of the abhorrence of Golus, even if it's America, is so deep and so powerful that Kosis, he's crushed by the fact that he finds himself in Golus. Lamoy, it reveals the Yechidah Shebenefesh. The Pintel Yid is revealed. Not the Pintel Yid is revealed because some guy is threatening him. The Pintel Yid is revealed because he senses the evil of the complacency that Golus can bring to him in the Golus of Ashiris. And the Rebbe says, this is the third Mordechai. Yidden are safe, and Yidden are sound, and Yidden are respected, and Yidden are wealthy, and Yidden are successful. And Mordechai screams, it's Golus. Want to leave Golus. And he rouses his generation, he rouses his nation We want Mashiach now, not to be satisfied with the Golus life, but to appreciate the need for Geula. And he arouses the nation, and he gives a koyach to the nation that's so profound that it becomes Kosas Lamar. The desperation to go out of Golus is in a madrega that reveals the Yechidah Shebenefesh. And here the Rebbe says, when the Yechidah Shebenefesh is revealed, because Yidden are crushed, but not crushed because of a Hitler or crushed because of a Haman, but crushed because of the simple fact that they're in Galus. It reveals the Yechidah Shebenefesh. But now it's not the Yechidah Shebenefesh, which is K'mei Dava Neis V'Kechas HaGiloyim, but rather, look on line 344, K'mei Shem Chadam Ha'etzem. That the Kechas HaGiloyim Shalai Yatziyah, the Kechas HaGiloyim, Hen K'mei Chadam Ha'etzem. There's the revelation of the Yechidah, but the revelation of the Yechidah in such a way that it doesn't push aside your mind and your heart, that you don't think and you don't feel and you don't sense, but that your mind and your heart and your senses are transformed. This is a much deeper. This is the third madrege, where Moshe Rabbeinu arouses Yidden to want to go out of their goals, and it changes their brain, and it changes their heart, and it changes their senses. Every faculty, every sense, every fiber of their being is transformed with this need to go out of goals, intellectually, emotionally, and so forth. And here again, the same principle is true. The Moshe Rabbeinu has two roles. The first role is a role that he shares with the first two Moshe Rabbeinus. Zon Mefanes Es Hamuna Atzmo, which is the Pnimius role, which is the primary role. He connects the Chai to the Yechidah. But then there is the second role, which is the revealed role, the leadership role, the Fabrengen. Zon Mefanes Es Yisrael Binyan Hamuna. And when it comes to this, what is his function? He tries to arouse Yidden to have a desire to go out of Galus to such an extent that this Kosas Lamar reveals the Yechidah Shebenefesh, not in such a way that the Gilei Yechidah is K'mei Dava Neis V'Kechas HaGiloyim, but the Kechas HaGiloyim K'mei Chadam Ha'etzem. This is the third Moshe Rabbeinu. And of course, this entire Maamar is leading to this. And the Maamar is setting you up. There's a Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's another Moshe Rabbeinu, and there's another Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's so plain and so obvious and so overt that the Rebbe is telling us what his role is. First of all, there's the basic idea. Veatah Tetzaveh. Zon Mefanes Yisrael Binyan Hamuna. Zon Mefanes Es Hamuna Asma. To connect Yidden to their own neshama, to their own godliness, to the Eibishter. And then there's different types of Veatah Tetzaveh. Says the Rebbe, the deepest Veatah Tetzaveh is now in America, where we have no fear from outside of ourselves. And we're free to practice Yiddishkeit, we're free to live comfortably, bagashmis abaruchnias. But we can become so comfortable that we can love Galus. And Moshe Rabbeinu's role is you have to hate Galus. Hate it so much that you hate your life. You can't stand one more second in Galus because you know you have to go out of Galus into the Geula. This really summarizes the Maamar. It summarizes the Maamar. You got, so to speak, the essence, the gist. First of all, that Veatah Tetzaveh is not a commandment for us; it's a commandment for Moshe Rabbeinu himself. L'kasher l'char b'es Yisrael l'meid insof lozun l'fanas es Yisrael binyan hamuna. Second of all, that there's a pnimius dika role and a chitzonius dika role. The pnimius dika role is zon l'fanas es hamuna atzma, which all Moshe Rabbeinu share, and the chitzonius dika role is lozun l'fanas Yisrael binyan hamuna. And then you have the body of the Maamar. The body of the Maamar is the three Moshe Rabbeinus. There are many, many more incredible Chedushim in this Maamar, extraordinary Chedushim in this Maamar. I'm just going to mention a few thoughts. Everybody knows, I'm doing this briefly because I'm going to save it for another date. Everybody knows the Pintel Yid, yeah? And the Pintel Yid, nicht der will, nicht der kann, wenn abgeritzt von Vergettlichkeit. Neither he wishes nor he is capable of becoming separate from the Eibishter. Which means, when does the Pintel Yid emerge? When you're going to threaten to take his life if he doesn't convert to a different religion. What about if you don't have to put on tefillin? Then it doesn't emerge, because you can still be Jewish. Yeah? Then it'll be adus. And this Maamar is a Chiddush Nifla. And it's based on a word from Alter Rebbe. That the Alter Rebbe said, Ich will mir nicht als dich allein. I want only you and you alone. And based on something that the Alter Rebbe said, the Rebbe learns from this that not only the Alter Rebbe, but every Yid who heard this story, the Shaykh's Alter Rebbe, has a Shaykh's to this. And what is it? Quote, Gilei Elokus Negei Elietzem Mitzvah Yossi. Lines 266, 267, and 268. The real will of every single Jew, it's should be revealed. A Jew's essence needs that God be revealed in the whole world. As far as I am concerned, this was never said in Hasidus before this Maamar. It was always that the Paltiel Yid can't become cut off from the Eibishter. Here is a new word. The Paltiel Yid needs that God be revealed in every corner of the world. And if the Paltiel Yid knows there's one corner of the world where God is not revealed, even as revealed to him, is Kassis Lamoy. It's a very, very big chiddush, very unusual thought. A Jew needs God to be fully revealed in the whole world, to the extent that the fact that he's not revealed is Kassis Lamoy. That's one point that I'm just mentioning. Another point is very, very interesting. The Rebbe speaks about two madregas in Yechida, in Etzem HaNefesh, just like we had before, that the Keiches HaGiluim is K'mei Davanesev Ala Etzem versus the Natzim Chadem HaAtzmos. He speaks two madregas in Etzem HaNefesh, and they're on page, his lines 346 and then 348. Two levels in Yechida. Look at this. The first level of Yechida is Etzem HaNefesh Hi Mugderes Begeder. The Yechida HaNefesh has a limit. You know what the limit is? That is the limitation of the Yechida HaNefesh is that it's infinite. What's the limitation of infinity? That it cannot be finite. This level of the Yechida, because it's limited in its infinity, when it reveals itself, it turns your brain off, and your heart off, and your senses off. It doesn't change them. But then there's a second madrega, and that is Etzem HaNefesh K'mei Mushreshes B'Ha'atzmos. The Yechida HaNefesh is one with Atzmos and Hos. Yechida HaNefesh is one with the Eibishter doesn't even have the limitation of being without limits. It's so infinite that it can be finite as well. This transforms the brain and the heart and the senses. And this is the second Kassis Lamoy versus the first Kassis Lamoy. It's also a very, very important Chiddush, and it will be another opportunity where we will revisit this Maamar. We will delve into these points at great length. And another very powerful thing that this Maamar says is, what is the meaning of the words Veatah Tetzaveh B'nai Yisrael? Taich. You should connect Yidden. How do we interpret this? Veatah Tetzaveh B'nai Yisrael means you should connect Yidden to God, yeah? But it doesn't say God in the pasuk, right? Veatah Tetzaveh B'nai Yisrael El HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't say, right? Says the Rebbe on lines 367, 368, 369, 370, 371. And then again, beginning on line 378, that Veatah Tetzaveh B'nai Yisrael means you should connect one Jew with another Jew. It's a whole new Maamar. This is not only about connecting Yid to the Eibishter, it's connecting one Yid to a second Yid. And again, the Rebbe plays out the whole thing again. There's two madregas in Veatah Tetzaveh. When you connect one Jew to another, there's also two madregas. The first madrega is that you reveal the Yechida HaNefesh, but you reveal the Yechida HaNefesh K'mei Begederes Begeder Apshitos, that the Tzir HaKeiches is Midavanesev Ala Etzem. And on this madrega, you connect every Jew to every other Jew. You know why? Because on the level of the neshama, miyadeg the lost namalosam mashashim elakim chayim, b'shagam shekulam asim is v'av echad l'kolan. On the level of the neshama, Jews are one. How can you be half? You have to le'echa kameicha mamish, because on the level of the neshama, me and the other Jew are the same. But my goof, forget about it. But there's a higher madrega. What's the higher madrega? Etzem ha-neshama k'fi shi mushreshes b'ha'atzmos. And on that madrega we say that the tzir da keiches hagiluyim is k'meichadem ha'atzmos. Says the Rebbe a chiddush, which again I've never seen before in Chassidus, that it's possible that you should love another Jew exactly as you love yourself. And in Tanya, what does it say in Tanya? How can you love another Jew exactly as you love yourself? On the level of the neshama, yeah? That's the lower madrega of the Yechida. The lower madrega of Yechida, the Magdaras, Begeder Apshitos, you can love the neshama because your neshama and his neshama are one and the same. What about his guf? His guf and my guf are incompatible. But medvar mamurim, if you have only the lower level of Yechida, etzem haneshama k'vish mugderes begeder apshitas. But when you reveal etzem haneshama, which is chadem ha'atzmos, you can literally love another Jew like it, love yourself, and you can love his guf. Look inside. You have line 382. You reveal the higher level of the Yechida. Says the Rebbe, the Yisrael, the idea that one Jew could love another Jew like he loves himself is b'chol and yonam shalahem gam ben yonam ashiyacham la'aguf. And the Rebbe says this is the Tamid. Right? There's Me'erev ad Beker. You reveal the Yechidah from darkness to light, and then there's the Tamid. There's no day and there's no night. This is the Maamar Rabbi say. And it's the best Fabrengen for Gimel Tammuz. The Maamar is about Emunah. It's about Emunah. And let's say it straight. We're all Jews and we're all Hasidim. We're all Lubavitchers. We do the same things we did 20 years ago and 30 years ago and 40 years ago. But we have to have the same heart, the same Emunah and the same joy. It's critical for people to realize that the essence of Gimel Tammuz has to be Simcha. Not because Gimel Tammuz is a happy day, but because Hasidim, if they're Hasidim, are happy people. And if God forbid we lose our Simcha with all the excuses in the world, we've lost our Chassid. And the whole message of Veatah Tetzaveh is that Rebbe gives koiches for Emunah and the Meibesh. We should live in this world and be redeemed from the alamas vestadim of this world. We should serve Hashem with the chayis and with the simcha and with the hiskashrus. And save kol safe, like Chaim Fogelman sings to the little children, if he said, Mashiach is coming now, he will be here at last.